The morning sun cast long shadows across the Norfolk Naval Base as Sarah Martinez stepped out of her rental car. She adjusted her civilian clothes and took a deep breath of the salty Virginia air. After 6 months of intensive classified training and preparation, she was finally here to take command of SEAL Team 7. The weight of her new responsibility felt heavier than any gear she had ever carried. Sarah had always been different. Growing up in a small Texas town, she was the girl who climbed the highest trees, ran the fastest races, and never backed down from a challenge. Her father, a retired Marine, had taught her that respect was earned through actions, not words. Her mother, a nurse, had shown her the importance of staying calm under pressure. These lessons had shaped her into the woman who now stood at the gates of one of the most elite military facilities in the world. The security guard checked her identification twice, his eyes showing surprise when he read her name and rank. "Captain Martinez? We weren't expecting. Welcome to Norfolk, ma'am." His confusion was understandable. Female SEAL officers were extremely rare, and even fewer held command positions. Sarah had fought for every step of her career, proving herself again and again in a world dominated by men. As she drove through the base, Sarah remembered her journey to this moment. She had enlisted in the Navy at 18, determined to serve her country. Her scores in basic training were exceptional, but when she expressed interest in special operations, she was met with skepticism. "Women don't belong in combat roles," one instructor had told her. "You should consider medical or administrative positions." But Sarah had a fire inside her that couldn't be extinguished by doubt or prejudice. The path to becoming a SEAL had been brutal. The physical training pushed her body to its absolute limits. Running miles in heavy boots, swimming in freezing water, carrying boats over her head, and enduring sleep deprivation that would break most people. But the mental challenges were even harder. She had to prove not just that she could do the job, but that she could do it better than anyone else. During Hell Week, the most notorious part of SEAL training, Sarah had watched strong men quit and ring the bell that ended their dreams. The instructors had pushed her harder than the others, waiting for her to break. They made her carry heavier loads, swim longer distances, and complete more repetitions. But every time they expected her to fail, she exceeded their expectations. "Martinez," Instructor Thompson had screamed at her during a particularly grueling exercise. "Why are you still here? This isn't a place for women." Sarah had looked him straight in the eye, water dripping from her exhausted face, and replied, "Because this is exactly where I belong, sir." That moment had become legendary among her class. She had graduated in the top 5%. Now, years later, she was pulling into the parking lot of the SEAL Team 7 headquarters. The building was imposing, made of concrete and steel, with small windows that revealed nothing of the secrets inside. Men in naval uniforms walked past, some carrying equipment, others engaged in serious conversations. This was a place where life and death decisions were made daily, where warriors prepared for missions that could change the course of history. Sarah gathered her belongings and walked toward the main entrance. She could feel eyes on her, and conversations seemed to pause as she passed. Word traveled fast on military bases, and she knew that news of their new commanding officer had already spread. Some would welcome her based on her stellar record and reputation. Others would reserve judgment until she proved herself, and some would oppose her simply because of her gender. The lobby was filled with photographs of previous SEAL teams, their faces serious and determined. Sarah recognized some of the legends, men whose exploits had become part of military lore. Soon, she would be leading men who looked up to these heroes, who had trained their entire adult lives for this calling. The responsibility was enormous, but she was ready. "Captain Martinez?" A young petty officer approached her. "I'm Rodriguez. I've been assigned to escort you to the briefing room. The team is waiting to meet you." His tone was respectful but curious. Sarah thanked him and followed him down a corridor lined with mission patches and unit citations. As they walked, Rodriguez made small talk. "The team has been deployed twice in the last year, ma'am. High success rate on all missions. They're good men, experienced operators." His words carried an underlying message. These were seasoned professionals who had worked together for years. Earning their respect would not be automatic. They stopped outside a heavy wooden door marked Briefing Room Alpha. Sarah could hear voices inside, the casual banter of men who trusted each other completely. In a few moments, she would walk in and change the dynamic forever. She straightened her shoulders and nodded to Rodriguez. "Ready when you are, ma'am," he said, his hand on the door handle. Sarah took one last deep breath and gave him the signal. The door opened, and 12 pairs of eyes turned toward her. The room fell silent as she stepped inside, her military bearing evident despite her civilian clothes. The men sat around a large table, some leaning back in their chairs, others studying documents. They were exactly what she had expected: tough, confident operators who had seen combat and survived. Their faces showed a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and professional assessment. These were the men who would follow her into dangerous situations, who would trust her with their lives. "Good morning, gentlemen," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong. "I'm Captain Martinez, your new commanding officer." She moved to the head of the table, making eye contact with each man. "I know this is unexpected. I'm sure you have questions, and I plan to answer them through my actions in the coming weeks and months." The silence stretched for several seconds before a grizzled Master Chief in his 40s spoke up. "Welcome aboard, Captain." His tone was neutral, professional. "Master Chief Patterson, Team's senior enlisted advisor." Other introductions followed, each man stating his name and specialty. She filed away each name and face, already beginning to assess the personalities and dynamics of her new command. After introductions, Sarah began her first briefing. She had studied every file, every mission report, every performance evaluation. She knew these men's strengths and weaknesses better than they realized. "Your last mission in Syria was exemplary," she began. "The hostage rescue was executed flawlessly, with no civilian casualties, and all objectives achieved." She saw several men exchange glances. She had their attention. For the next hour, Sarah outlined her command philosophy, her expectations, and her immediate plans for the team. She spoke about training exercises, equipment upgrades, and potential deployment schedules. Her knowledge was comprehensive, her plans detailed and practical. But she could still feel the undercurrent of doubt in the room. As the briefing concluded, the men filed out in small groups, their conversations muted. Sarah knew they would be discussing her extensively over the next few days. She had made a good first impression, but that was all it was. Real leadership would be proven in training exercises, under pressure, in the field. Master Chief Patterson lingered after the others left. "Captain, may I speak freely?" Sarah nodded, appreciating his directness. "The men are professionals. They'll follow orders and execute missions regardless of who's in command. But trust is earned through shared hardship and proven competence. They'll be watching everything you do." "I understand, Master Chief," Sarah replied. "I've been watched my entire career. I'm used to having to prove myself twice as hard as everyone else. What I need to know is whether you'll support me as we build that trust." Patterson studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Yes, ma'am. Your record speaks for itself. Just remember, these men have been through hell together. They're family. Earning your place in that family won't happen overnight." His words carried weight, and Sarah appreciated his honesty. After Patterson left, Sarah sat alone in the briefing room, looking at the empty chairs around the table. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. She thought about her father's words: leadership isn't about commanding respect, it's about earning it. She had a long way to go, but she was determined to succeed. The rest of the day was spent in meetings with base commanders, reviewing classified intelligence reports, and touring the team's facilities. Everywhere she went, she felt the weight of curious stares and whispered conversations. By evening, she was exhausted but satisfied with her first day. As she drove to her temporary quarters, Sarah reflected on the road ahead. She knew there would be challenges she couldn't anticipate, tests she couldn't prepare for. But she also knew that she belonged here, that she had earned her position through years of dedication and sacrifice. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to prove herself to her team, to show them that their new captain was worthy of their trust and respect. The sun was setting over the Chesapeake Bay as Sarah unpacked her belongings in her spartanly furnished room. Photos of her family went on the desk, reminders of the people who had supported her journey. Her father's Marine Corps Medal of Valor sat beside them, a symbol of the military tradition she was proud to continue. Before bed, she reviewed the personnel files one more time, memorizing details about each team member's background, training, and experience. These weren't just statistics to her. They represented real people with families, dreams, and fears. Soon, she would be responsible for their safety and success. It was a responsibility she didn't take lightly. As she turned off the lights, Sarah knew that tomorrow would be another step in proving herself worthy of command. The men of SEAL Team 7 were watching, evaluating, judging. She welcomed their scrutiny because she knew that under pressure, her true character would shine through. She had overcome every obstacle in her path so far, and she was ready for whatever came next. The alarm buzzed at 0500 hours, but Sarah was already awake. She had been lying in bed for the past hour, mentally preparing for her first full day of training with the team. Today would be crucial in establishing her credibility as their leader. She dressed quickly in her workout gear and headed to the team's physical training facility. The gym was already occupied when she arrived. Several team members were working out, their movements precise and powerful. Sarah noticed how they glanced at her without making it obvious, assessing her physical condition. In the SEAL community, physical fitness wasn't just important, it was essential for survival. A weak link could compromise an entire mission. "Morning, Captain," called out Lieutenant Jake Williams, the team's demolitions expert. He was bench pressing what looked like twice his body weight. "Care to join us?" His tone was friendly enough, but Sarah detected a challenge underneath. She accepted without hesitation. For the next 2 hours, Sarah worked out alongside her team. She matched them rep for rep on pull-ups, kept pace during their 5-mile run, and held her own during combat conditioning exercises. Sweat poured down her face as she pushed her body to its limits, but she never showed weakness or asked for a break. When Master Chief Patterson called time, several team members were breathing hard, but Sarah looked ready to continue. "Not bad, Captain," muttered Petty Officer First Class Marcus Thompson as he toweled off. Thompson was known as one of the strongest men on the team, and earning even grudging respect from him was significant. Sarah simply nodded and headed for the showers, letting her performance speak for itself. The morning briefing covered intelligence reports from various global hotspots. Sarah led the discussion, pointing out potential mission scenarios and asking for input from specialists. When she analyzed satellite imagery of a terrorist compound in Afghanistan, her observations were sharp and tactically sound. Sergeant Rodriguez, the team sniper, found himself impressed by her understanding of overwatch positions and fields of fire. "Captain knows her stuff," he whispered to his buddy. That analysis was spot on. Word of her competence began to spread, but Sarah knew that intellectual knowledge was different from battlefield experience. The real test would come during training exercises. That afternoon brought their first tactical exercise under her command. The scenario was a hostage rescue in an urban environment, using a mock village constructed for training purposes. Sarah studied the layout carefully, identifying entry points, potential ambush locations, and escape routes. Her plan was methodical and thorough, taking into account each team member's specialty and experience. "Williams, you'll handle the breaching charges on the primary entrance," she instructed. "Thompson and Garcia will provide perimeter security. Rodriguez, I want you on overwatch from the water tower. Patterson, you're with me on the primary assault team." She continued assigning roles, her commands clear and confident. As the team prepared their gear, Sarah overheard some grumbling. "She's being too cautious," one man muttered. "Davidson would have had us in and out in half the time." Commander Davidson had been their previous CO, a legendary operator with decades of experience. Sarah knew she was being compared to him constantly. The exercise began at 1,400 hours. Sarah positioned herself with the assault team, ready to lead from the front. When the signal came, the team moved with practiced precision. Williams detonated his charges perfectly, creating the entry point. The assault team flowed through the breach like water, each man knowing his role. But something went wrong. Intelligence had indicated 4 hostiles in the building, but the exercise controllers had added surprises. Additional terrorists appeared from unexpected positions, forcing the team to adapt quickly. Sarah's initial plan was sound, but real combat always brought chaos. "Contact left," shouted Garcia as simulated gunfire erupted from a previously clear room. The team began taking casualties from the exercise controllers. Sarah had to make split-second decisions, reorganizing her remaining forces while still achieving the objective. "Rodriguez, we need suppressing fire on that window," she radioed. "Thompson, swing around to the rear exit. Don't let anyone escape." Her voice remained calm despite the simulated chaos around her. She personally led the charge into the building where the hostages were supposedly held. The exercise ended with mixed results. They had rescued the hostages, but at a higher cost in casualties than expected. During the after-action review, some team members were critical of her decisions. "We should have used flashbangs in that first room," suggested Lieutenant Wilson. "The entry was too slow." Sarah listened to all feedback without defensiveness. "You're right about the flashbangs," she acknowledged. "I was overly concerned about potential civilian casualties. In hindsight, that caution cost us tactical advantage." Her willingness to admit mistakes and learn from criticism impressed several team members. Master Chief Patterson pulled her aside after the debrief. "First exercise is always rough with a new CO," he said. "The men are testing you, seeing how you handle pressure and criticism. You did well taking their feedback." Sarah appreciated his guidance, recognizing that Patterson was becoming an invaluable ally. Over the following weeks, the training exercises continued. Each scenario was designed to test different aspects of leadership and tactical knowledge. Sarah's performance improved steadily as she learned the team's capabilities and preferences. More importantly, she began to understand each man's personality and how to motivate them effectively. During a particularly challenging night exercise, everything clicked. The team was tasked with infiltrating a heavily defended position and eliminating a high-value target. Sarah's plan was aggressive but calculated, taking advantage of each operator's strengths. When unexpected complications arose, her adaptations were swift and effective. "Move, move, move," she whispered into her radio as the team advanced through simulated enemy territory. Her leadership was confident and decisive. When Petty Officer Martinez was wounded during the approach, she instantly reorganized the team formation. "Garcia, take Martinez's position. Williams, adjust your timing on the charges to compensate for our reduced numbers." The mission was a complete success. They eliminated the target, extracted without casualties, and completed all secondary objectives. During the debrief, the exercise controllers praised the team's performance. "That was textbook execution," the senior controller commented. "Excellent leadership and adaptation under pressure." More importantly, Sarah noticed a change in her team's attitude. The skeptical looks were being replaced by nods of approval. Men who had been reserved in their interactions began engaging her in tactical discussions. She was slowly earning their respect through competence and consistency. However, not everyone was convinced. Petty Officer First Class Stevens remained openly skeptical of female leadership in combat units. During a break between exercises, he made his feelings known to anyone who would listen. "I don't care how many push-ups she can do," he complained. "When the bullets start flying for real, she'll crack. Women don't have what it takes for this job." Stevens' comments created tension within the team. Some men defended their new captain, while others remained silent. Sarah was aware of the undercurrents, but chose not to address them directly. She knew that words wouldn't change Stevens' mind, only consistent performance would. The situation came to a head during a combat endurance exercise designed to push the team to their physical and mental limits. The scenario involved a 36-hour continuous operation with minimal food and sleep. Teams had to navigate difficult terrain, engage multiple targets, and complete complex objectives while under constant pressure. As the hours stretched on, exhaustion began affecting everyone's performance. Sarah pushed herself harder than anyone else, carrying extra equipment when team members struggled, making the difficult decisions that preserved mission effectiveness. When Stevens began showing signs of heat exhaustion during hour 28, it was Sarah who noticed first. "Stevens, take a knee," she ordered, moving to his position. The stubborn petty officer tried to wave her off, insisting he was fine. But Sarah could see the signs of heat injury that could quickly become life-threatening. "That wasn't a suggestion," she said firmly. "You're showing classic symptoms. Drink water and cool down. Now." Stevens reluctantly complied, secretly grateful that someone had noticed his condition before it became dangerous. Sarah redistributed his equipment among other team members and adjusted the mission timeline to allow for proper recovery. Her quick thinking and genuine concern for her subordinates' welfare didn't go unnoticed. When the exercise concluded, Stevens approached her privately. "Captain, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "You saved my life out there. I was wrong about you." The conversion of her most vocal critic sent a powerful message throughout the team. As word of the incident spread, Sarah's reputation grew stronger. The men began telling stories of their captain's leadership, her physical toughness, and her genuine care for their welfare. She wasn't just another officer giving orders from behind a desk. She was a warrior who would lead from the front and protect her people. The transformation wasn't complete overnight, but Sarah could feel the shift in team dynamics. Conversations became more relaxed when she was present. Men began seeking her advice on professional and sometimes personal matters. During recreational activities, she was included as one of the team rather than tolerated as an outsider. One evening, as the team gathered for an informal barbecue, Sarah found herself surrounded by her operators sharing stories and laughing together. Master Chief Patterson caught her eye and nodded approvingly. She had crossed an important threshold in earning their acceptance. But Sarah knew that the ultimate test was still ahead. Training exercises, no matter how realistic, couldn't fully replicate the stress and chaos of actual combat. Until she led these men in a real mission, there would always be an element of uncertainty about her capabilities under fire. That opportunity would come sooner than anyone expected. Intelligence reports were suggesting increased terrorist activity in several global hotspots. Somewhere in the world, dangerous people were planning operations that would threaten innocent lives. When the call came, SEAL Team 7 would be ready to respond, led by a captain who had proven herself worthy of their trust and confidence. Sarah understood that her journey was far from over. Each mission would bring new challenges and opportunities to prove her leadership. But as she looked around at the faces of her team, she felt confident that they would face those challenges together as a unified force dedicated to protecting their nation and each other. The phone call came at 0300 hours on a Tuesday morning in November. Sarah was instantly alert, years of military training having conditioned her to wake completely at the first ring. The duty officer's voice was crisp and urgent. "Captain Martinez, you're needed in the operations center immediately. Mission briefing in 30 minutes. As Sarah dressed quickly in her uniform, she felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded deployment. This would be her first real mission as commanding officer of SEAL Team 7, the moment when all her training and preparation would be put to the ultimate test. She knew her team was ready, but the question that haunted every leader remained: was she ready to make life and death decisions in the chaos of combat? The operations center was buzzing with activity when she arrived. Intelligence analysts hunched over computer screens displaying satellite imagery and communication intercepts. The large digital display at the front of the room showed a map of Somalia, with several locations marked in red. Sarah's stomach tightened as she recognized the indicators of a developing crisis. Admiral Richardson, the base commander, was waiting for her with a grim expression. "Captain, we have a situation developing in Mogadishu. 3 American aid workers were taken hostage yesterday by a group affiliated with Al-Shabaab terrorists. Intelligence suggests they're being held in a compound on the outskirts of the city." The briefing that followed painted a dire picture. The hostages were Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a surgeon with Doctors Without Borders, her assistant nurse Maria Santos, and journalist David Chun, who had been documenting their humanitarian work. The terrorists were demanding the release of several high-value prisoners in exchange for the Americans' lives, with a deadline set for 48 hours. "Local forces are not capable of handling this type of operation," Admiral Richardson continued. "The Somali government has requested our assistance, but they want it done quietly. No international incident, no civilian casualties. That's where your team comes in, Captain." Sarah studied the intelligence package carefully. Satellite photos showed a fortified compound with high walls, guard towers, and multiple buildings. Heat signature analysis indicated approximately 15 to 20 hostile forces, heavily armed and experienced in urban warfare. The hostages were believed to be held in the main building, but their exact location was uncertain. "What's our timeline, Admiral?" Sarah asked, her mind already working through tactical possibilities. The longer hostages remained in captivity, the more dangerous their situation became. Terrorists often moved prisoners frequently to avoid rescue attempts, and prolonged captivity increased the psychological trauma for victims. "Wheels up in 6 hours," Richardson replied. "You'll fly to Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti for final preparation and mission launch. This operation has presidential authorization at the highest classification levels. Failure is not an option, Captain." As the briefing concluded, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 3 innocent lives hung in the balance, and the success or failure of their rescue would rest largely on her leadership decisions. She thought briefly of her parents, who had always supported her military career but worried constantly about her safety. They would never know about this mission, but she carried their love and pride with her. The team assembly went smoothly. Within 2 hours, all 12 operators were briefed, equipped, and ready for deployment. Sarah watched as her men prepared their weapons and gear with the methodical precision of professionals. There was no joking or casual conversation now. Everyone understood the gravity of their mission. Master Chief Patterson approached her as they prepared to board the transport aircraft. "The men are ready, Captain," he said quietly. "They trust your leadership. More importantly, they know you'll bring them home." His words carried special meaning because Patterson had served on dozens of similar missions and had seen commanders crack under pressure. The flight to Djibouti took 14 hours, during which the team continued mission planning and equipment preparation. Sarah used the time to study every detail of the target area, memorizing building layouts, guard positions, and potential escape routes. She also spent time talking individually with each team member, ensuring they understood their specific roles and responsibilities. "Rodriguez, I need you positioned here," she said, pointing to a location on the aerial photograph. "Your overwatch position will be critical for covering our insertion and providing early warning of enemy reinforcements." The sniper nodded, his eyes studying the terrain features that would affect his shooting angles. "Williams, the walls of this compound are reinforced concrete," she continued, addressing the demolitions expert. "Standard breaching charges won't be enough. What do you recommend?" Williams examined the intelligence photos carefully before suggesting a combination of shaped charges and thermite that would create the necessary access points. Each conversation reinforced Sarah's understanding of her team's capabilities while building their confidence in her tactical knowledge. These men had worked together for years, but they were now adapting to her leadership style and decision-making process. The successful integration of her command with their established relationships was crucial for mission success. Upon arrival at Camp Lemonnier, final intelligence updates painted a mixed picture. The good news was that all 3 hostages appeared to be alive and in relatively good condition. The challenging news was that terrorist reinforcements had arrived at the compound, increasing the enemy force to an estimated 25 fighters. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," briefed Colonel Martinez, the intelligence officer. "Local sources indicate the terrorists are becoming increasingly agitated. They've issued a new deadline, moved up by 12 hours. We now have less than 24 hours before they threaten to execute the first hostage." Sarah absorbed this information while maintaining her composed exterior. Inside, she felt the familiar pre-mission tension that every combat leader experienced. The shortened timeline meant less preparation time and increased risk, but delay could cost innocent lives. "We'll adjust our timeline accordingly," she announced. "Launch preparation in 8 hours." The final mission briefing included all support elements: helicopter pilots, intelligence analysts, medical personnel, and quick reaction forces. Sarah's plan was complex but flexible, accounting for multiple contingencies and escape scenarios. She had learned from her training exercises that no plan survived first contact with the enemy unchanged. "Primary insertion will be here, under cover of darkness," she explained, using a laser pointer to indicate positions on the target map. 2 teams. Alpha team will secure the hostages. Bravo team will neutralize external security and provide overwatch. Extraction will be via helicopter from the compound courtyard once all objectives are achieved. Questions came from various team members, each seeking clarification on timing, communications, and backup procedures. Sarah answered each query confidently, demonstrating her thorough understanding of every mission aspect. When Petty Officer Stevens asked about rules of engagement, her response was clear and decisive. "We are authorized to use all necessary force to protect American lives and achieve mission success," she stated firmly. However, every effort will be made to minimize civilian casualties. These terrorists have chosen to endanger innocent people. The consequences of their actions are on them, not us. As the briefing concluded, team members dispersed to make final preparations. Sarah found herself alone with her thoughts for the first time since receiving the mission alert. In a few hours, she would lead these brave men into combat against a determined enemy in unfamiliar territory. The training exercises that had built her credibility with the team were nothing compared to the real thing. Master Chief Patterson found her checking her weapon for the third time, a nervous habit that indicated pre-mission stress. "Captain, you've got this," he said simply. "Your preparation has been thorough, your plan is sound, and your team trusts you completely. That's all any commander can ask for." His words provided the reassurance Sarah needed. She had done everything possible to prepare for this mission. Her physical conditioning was excellent, her tactical knowledge was comprehensive, and her team was among the finest operators in the world. Success would require courage, adaptability, and a measure of luck, but she was ready to lead. The final equipment check revealed that each team member carried approximately 80 pounds of gear, weapons, ammunition, communications equipment, medical supplies, and specialized tools for their assigned tasks. Sarah's load was no lighter than anyone else's. She had insisted on carrying her full share of mission-essential equipment. As they boarded the helicopters that would take them to their insertion point, Sarah looked at each of her men one final time. These were husbands and fathers, sons and brothers who had volunteered for one of the most dangerous jobs in the military. In a few hours, some of them might not return home. The weight of that responsibility was almost overwhelming. The helicopter lifted off into the star-filled African night, carrying SEAL Team 7 toward their destiny. Sarah checked her watch. They had 6 hours of darkness remaining for the mission. 6 hours to rescue 3 American hostages and prove that her leadership was worthy of the trust these brave men had placed in her. As the aircraft flew over the dark landscape below, Sarah offered a silent prayer for the safety of her team and the success of their mission. Soon, the months of training and preparation would be put to the ultimate test. In the crucible of combat, she would either prove herself worthy of command or face the consequences of failure. There was no middle ground in the life and death world of special operations. The radio crackled with updates from the command center, confirming that satellite surveillance still showed the hostages alive in the target compound. Time was running short, but SEAL Team 7 was ready to answer the call. Their captain had prepared them well, and they were about to show the world what American warriors could accomplish when innocent lives hung in the balance. The helicopter descended through the pre-dawn darkness toward the insertion point, 3 kilometers from the terrorist compound. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as the moment of truth approached. Through her night vision goggles, she could see the barren Somali landscape rushing past below. In 30 minutes, her team would either be celebrating a successful rescue or fighting for their lives in a hostile environment. 2 minutes to insertion, the pilot's voice crackled through her headset. Sarah turned to her team, seeing their faces painted with camouflage and their eyes reflecting the same determination she felt. These men had followed her through months of training, and now they were trusting her with their lives in actual combat. "Remember the plan," she said quietly into her radio. "Alpha Team secures the hostages. Bravo Team controls the perimeter. Stay flexible, watch each other's backs, and let's bring everyone home." The men nodded, each lost in his own pre-mission thoughts and preparations. The helicopter touched down silently in a dried riverbed, its rotors kicking up clouds of dust that obscured their movement. SEAL Team 7 flowed out of the aircraft like shadows, immediately establishing a defensive perimeter while Sarah confirmed their position with GPS coordinates. Within 60 seconds, the helicopter had lifted off, leaving them alone in hostile territory. "Move out," Sarah whispered, and the team began their approach march toward the target compound. They moved in tactical formation, using hand signals and whispered radio communications to coordinate their advance. The terrain was rough and rocky, perfect for concealment, but challenging for maintaining silent movement. Rodriguez, the team sniper, split off to establish his overwatch position on a hill overlooking the compound. His voice came through Sarah's earpiece, confirming what satellite intelligence had shown. Overwatch in position. I count 4 sentries visible, probably more inside the buildings. Heat signatures indicate multiple personnel throughout the compound. As they moved closer to the target, Sarah could feel the familiar heightening of her senses that came with approaching combat. Every sound seemed amplified. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every decision could mean life or death for her team or the hostages they were trying to save. Alpha Team, move to position, she radioed as they reached the compound's outer perimeter. The walls were higher than the photos had indicated, nearly 12 feet of reinforced concrete topped with razor wire. Williams immediately began preparing his breaching charges while Thompson and Garcia provided security. Suddenly, Rodriguez's urgent voice filled their headsets. Movement in the guard tower. Sentry is alert, scanning our direction with night vision. Hold position until I can neutralize. The team froze, melting into whatever cover they could find. Sarah held her breath, knowing that discovery now would mean disaster for both her team and the hostages. The sharp crack of Rodriguez's suppressed rifle was barely audible, but Sarah saw the guard tower sentry slump forward. Target down, Rodriguez reported. You're clear to proceed, but move fast. They'll notice he's missing soon. Williams worked quickly to place his charges, while Sarah studied the compound layout one final time. Intelligence had indicated the hostages were being held in the main building, but she knew that could have changed. They would have to clear each structure systematically while racing against time. Charges set, Williams reported. 30 seconds to breach. Sarah positioned her assault team at the insertion point, weapons ready. Her hands were steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Years of training had prepared her for this moment, but she knew that real combat always brought surprises that no training could anticipate. The explosion was louder than expected, sending chunks of concrete flying through the air. Before the dust settled, Sarah was leading her team through the breach, their movements smooth and coordinated despite the chaos. Alpha Team, move to the main building. Bravo Team, secure the courtyard, she commanded. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions as the terrorists responded to the assault. Sarah heard the distinctive sound of AK-47s and saw muzzle flashes from several buildings. Contact front, shouted Garcia as bullets whined past their position. The team immediately began returning fire with precise, controlled bursts. Sarah's training took over as she assessed the tactical situation. The terrorists were better organized than expected, with overlapping fields of fire and coordinated defensive positions. Rodriguez, I need suppressing fire on that building to our left, she radioed while moving her assault team toward the main structure. On it, came the sniper's calm reply. His rifle began picking off targets with methodical precision, forcing the defenders to take cover and disrupting their defensive coordination. Sarah used the distraction to advance with Thompson and Patterson toward the building where the hostages were reportedly held. As they approached the main structure, Sarah could hear voices inside speaking in Somali and Arabic. Through a partially open window, she glimpsed armed figures moving around what appeared to be a room where people were sitting on the floor. Her heart rate spiked as she realized they had found the hostages. I have visual on the hostages, she whispered into her radio. 3 individuals, hands bound, sitting against the far wall. At least 2 guards visible inside the room. The tactical situation was delicate. Any mistake could result in the hostages being killed before they could be rescued. Sarah made a split-second decision that would define her leadership under fire. Instead of waiting for backup or requesting additional support, she signaled Thompson to prepare flashbang grenades while she moved to the room's entrance. The element of surprise was their greatest advantage, but timing would be critical. On my mark, she whispered, raising 3 fingers to count down. Thompson nodded, holding the flashbang ready. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that the next few seconds would determine success or failure. 3, 2, 1, execute. The flashbang detonated with blinding light and deafening sound, disorienting everyone inside the room. Sarah burst through the entrance, her weapon trained on the guards who were stumbling around in confusion. Down, 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 she shouted to the hostages while engaging the nearest terrorist. The gunfight inside the room was brief, but intense. Sarah's training and superior equipment gave her the advantage, but she had to be incredibly careful not to hit the hostages in the crossfire. When the shooting stopped, both guards were down, and the three Americans were unharmed but terrified. Dr. Walsh, Maria, David, I'm Captain Martinez, U.S. Navy, Sarah said quickly while cutting their bonds with her tactical knife. We're here to take you home. Stay low and follow my instructions exactly. The relief on their faces was visible even in the dim light filtering through the windows. But the mission was far from over. As Sarah prepared to move the hostages to the extraction point, intense gunfire erupted in the courtyard. Stephen's voice came through her earpiece with urgent news. Multiple vehicles approaching from the north. Looks like reinforcements, at least 20 fighters. The tactical situation had suddenly become much more complicated. Sarah had to get the hostages to safety while her team was now outnumbered and potentially surrounded. She made another command decision that demonstrated her growth as a leader under pressure. Rodriguez, I need you to slow down those reinforcements, she radioed. Williams, prepare demo charges on the compound's main gate. We're going to create our own escape route. Patterson, get ready to call in the extraction helicopters. As gunfire intensified around the compound, Sarah calmly organized the evacuation of the hostages. She assigned Thompson to escort them to the extraction point while she remained with the assault team to cover their withdrawal. It was a decision that put the mission success ahead of her personal safety, exactly what her team expected from their leader. Captain, you should go with the hostages, Master Chief Patterson suggested during a brief lull in the fighting. We can handle the rearguard action. But Sarah shook her head firmly. My job is to make sure everyone gets home safely, she replied. That includes all of you. Rodriguez's sniper fire was taking a devastating toll on the reinforcements, but ammunition was running low and the enemy was adapting to his position. Williams' demolition charges had successfully breached the compound's main gate, creating an escape route, but enemy forces were moving to block it. The extraction helicopters appeared on the horizon just as the tactical situation was becoming critical. Sarah could hear the distinctive sound of their rotors cutting through the night air, bringing hope of salvation for her team and the rescued hostages. But they still had to fight their way to the landing zone. All teams, fighting withdrawal to the extraction point, Sarah commanded. Leapfrog movement. Watch your ammunition consumption. The team began moving in coordinated bounds, with some operators providing covering fire while others advanced with the hostages. Dr. Walsh stumbled during the movement, exhausted from her captivity. Without hesitation, Sarah helped support the wounded surgeon while maintaining her tactical awareness of the surrounding threats. Stay with me, Doc, she encouraged. Almost there. As they reached the extraction zone, the helicopters were taking fire from multiple directions. One aircraft was hit in the tail rotor and had to abort its landing, leaving only one helicopter for the entire team plus hostages. Sarah quickly calculated that they were over the aircraft's normal capacity. Load the hostages first, she ordered without hesitation. Then, wounded, then, essential personnel. Several team members started to protest, knowing this meant some of them might be left behind, but Sarah's command voice cut through their objections. Execute the order. Master Chief Patterson grabbed her arm as she helped load the hostages aboard the helicopter. Captain, you're essential personnel, he shouted over the rotor noise and gunfire. But Sarah was already moving back toward the remaining team members who were still fighting to secure the landing zone. The helicopter lifted off with the hostages and half the team, promising to return for the rest. Sarah found herself with 6 operators holding a deteriorating defensive position against growing numbers of enemy fighters. Dawn was breaking, which would eliminate their night vision advantage. Rodriguez, status on ammunition, she called to the sniper, who had been engaging targets continuously for over an hour. Running low, came his reply. Maybe 20 rounds left. Similar reports came from other team members as their ammunition supplies dwindled. Just when the situation seemed hopeless, Sarah heard the sound she had been praying for, the extraction helicopter returning for them. But the landing zone was now under heavy fire, making a safe pickup extremely dangerous. The pilot's voice crackled through her radio. "Too hot down there, Captain. Can you move to alternate extraction point Bravo?" Sarah looked at her map, calculating distances and enemy positions. Extraction point Bravo was 800 meters away across open ground. With wounded team members and limited ammunition, it would be an extremely dangerous movement. But staying where they were meant certain capture or death. "All teams, prepare to move to extraction point Bravo," she announced. "Williams, I need you to create a diversion with your remaining charges. Everyone else, prepare for rapid movement under fire." The explosions from Williams' charges sent debris flying skyward and temporarily suppressed enemy fire. "Move," Sarah shouted, and the remaining team members began their desperate dash across the open ground. Enemy bullets kicked up dust around their feet as they ran, but Rodriguez continued providing covering fire from his overwatch position until the very last moment. They reached the alternate extraction point just as the helicopter settled to the ground. Enemy forces were converging on their location from multiple directions, but the aircraft's door gunners were laying down suppressing fire to keep them back. Sarah counted her men as they boarded. Everyone was present and accounted for. As the helicopter lifted off and banked away from the compound, Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief. All 3 hostages had been rescued successfully, and every member of her team was returning home alive. The mission that had tested her leadership under the ultimate pressure had been a complete success. Dr. Walsh reached across the helicopter's cramped cabin to grasp Sarah's hand. "Thank you," she said simply, tears streaming down her face. "You saved our lives." Similar gratitude came from the other rescued hostages, but Sarah's attention was focused on her team members. "Outstanding work, everyone," she told her operators as they began the flight back to base. Professional execution under extremely difficult circumstances. Master Chief Patterson caught her eye and nodded approvingly. The respect she saw in his face, and in the faces of all her men, told her that she had finally proven herself worthy of their trust. The debriefing that followed praised the mission's success while noting lessons learned for future operations. Admiral Richardson personally commended Sarah's leadership under fire and her tactical decisions that had saved both hostages and her own team members. But the greatest validation came from her operators themselves. "Best CO we've ever served under," Stevens told his buddies later. "She'll fight alongside you, not just give orders from the rear." Word of SEAL Team 7's successful rescue operation and their captain's leadership spread throughout the special operations community. As Sarah sat in her quarters that evening, exhausting finally, catching up with her, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the small Texas town where she had first dreamed of military service to the battlefields of Somalia, where she had proven her leadership, every challenge had prepared her for greater responsibilities. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was her father calling from Texas, having heard news reports about the successful rescue operation. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mother and I always knew you were destined for great things." Outside her window, she could see members of her team gathered around a barbecue grill, celebrating their successful mission and the safe return of all personnel. They had started as skeptical professionals who questioned whether a woman could lead them in combat. Now they were a unified team that trusted each other completely. Sarah smiled as she watched her operators sharing stories and laughter. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new missions, but tonight they could celebrate a job well done. She had proven that leadership wasn't about gender, but about competence, courage, and genuine care for the people under her command. The journey from outsider to accepted leader had been difficult, marked by constant pressure to prove herself worthy of the position. But through determination, skill, and an unwavering commitment to excellence, Sarah Martinez had earned her place among the elite warriors of SEAL Team 7. The respect and trust of her team was a victory more precious than any medal or commendation. As she prepared for bed, Sarah knew that her story was far from over. There would be more missions, more challenges, and more opportunities to lead brave men into dangerous situations. But she faced the future with confidence, knowing that she had found her place in the Brotherhood of Arms and proven herself worthy of the trust placed in her by her nation and her team.